Hello, my friends. Amy R. here from Prairie Paper and Ink with another Simon Says STAMPtember limited edition collaboration. Today's collab is with Art Impressions. Always one of my favorite collabs for STAMPtember. This set, Boba Babes, and the coordinating dies are limited edition, one and done. When they sell out, they are not restocked. However, cannot recommend checking out Art Impressions products enough. So much to choose from. These funny ladies, etc. They have done many over the years. All kinds of sets, many different styles as well, like watercolor type stamps, etc. Highly recommend them. I love these ladies. They're so good. Another reason why I love them is Art Impressions is another one of the brands that has full color examples on their packaging. And I love it because it gives me ideas and inspiration and also shading ideas, which we'll get to. Another thing I love to do, paper piecing. I don't do this as much as I used to do in the past, but every once in a while I'll pull out my pattern paper, my curated collection of pattern paper and use it. And these ones, I love it because it's like paper dolls in a sense, because it's like I can paper piece their little outfits. It's fun. I love it. So I pulled out the Carta coffee shop pattern paper. This pattern paper was actually part of a previous Simon Says Stamp monthly kit a few months ago. And yeah, I bought an extra pack because I was like, well, coffee themed, hello. But also there's a bunch of patterns in here that just work for anything, which is what I'm using. So I picked several different papers from this pack, and I'm going to paper piece their outfits with them. So the first thing I had done is I had stamped that image onto some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 110-pound cardstock with Simon's Black Premium Dye ink. And then I'd left the stamp in my MISTI. And then I'm taking these pattern papers and I am stamping parts of this image onto the pattern papers with that same black dye ink. And all of that's going to look like a hot mess, but it's going to come together in the end. So I just trim out pieces big enough for the different areas because I'm going to paper piece their entire outfits, their shirts, their pants, the shirt and pants of the lady on the left. Don't ask me why. One is Ethel and one is Gladys. Ethel is on the left. Gladys is on the right. I don't make the rules, man. That's just the names that popped in my head. So I'm paper piecing Ethel's shirt and pants, and then Gladys is wearing a cardigan, a shirt, and pants, and I'm going to paper piece all of them. So I've got all my little pieces here, and like I said, everything's going to look like a hot mess, but there's a method to my madness. So we will come back to all of the pattern paper in a minute. The first thing I need to do is color these images. And like I said, Art Impressions does these full color images, and I love it. I am comfortable with coloring. I've been coloring since I was a toddler, really. But I've been coloring with alcohol markers for a couple decades now. Like, I like to color. But I don't think, though, we all have our own unique way of coloring and what works for us. And that's why I love the Art Impressions images, because they do coloring and shading in a way that I just don't. And when I do it, I somewhat copy it, still put my own little spin on it here and there, but it's fun and it gives it a different look, because especially the shading element, it's not how my brain sees it. So I love having the packaging for inspiration. So I have it set like kind of in front of me, and then I'm using Copic markers. Any alcohol marker will work for this. You could also do this with whatever coloring medium of choice. And I'm laying down my colors, and I'm not doing any blending. I just lay down a color, and then I'll take a darker shade and I add it in the areas where the packaging has the shadows on there. That's it. It's super simple, and it all just starts to come together. And then of course I am leaving their outfits everywhere where the pattern paper is going to go. Don't need to color that. That's getting covered up. So I just am skipping that for the moment. And I chose colors to go with the pattern papers, although quite often I will use very similar colors in my own stash to what the packaging is. And I almost did that because I really liked the color combo they had. I was like, these are really pretty colors. But then the pattern paper won. So anyway, and also boba tea. Anyone fans of boba tea? I'm honestly not. I like the more fruity kinds with the little like poppin' pearls. I don't like the tapioca pearls that are usually in like the milk teas and boba teas. Nope. Just nope. I can't handle the texture of them. They gross me out. But yeah, most of those places do like more like fruity type tea drinks. Sometimes like sparkling ones. And then they have the little poppin' pearls. Those, love. They're so yummy. Like, I might need to go get one after. We've got a little bubble tea place in my community that I love. And they have those little like strawberry poppin' pearls. Anyway, back to what I was doing. Pattern paper. So you need a good pair of detail cutting scissors. I'm using my little Cutter Bee cutting scissors here. These scissors I've literally had for well over a decade. I honestly can't remember. It's been a million years. These are what I prefer. There's many, whatever detail scissors work for you. And when it comes to paper piecing, you cut right on the line. Now, this part right here, I have not sped up in editing. This is, I take my time with it. For me, the only difficult part is trying to hold this on camera. Because when I'm, doing this little bit of fussy cutting, I have the pattern paper like right in front of my face. So I can, see where I'm going. And I keep my scissors fairly steady, and it's the paper I move more. You get smoother cuts, and it's an easier way to also kind of get into the little areas. And again, you cut right on the stamp line. No gap in between, because in the end, this is going to look pretty seamless. So yeah, it takes a little bit of time, but honestly not that long. And for me, the only time it's difficult is just trying to film it. Because I have to hold my hands out further, to so you guys can see what I'm doing on camera. And then I naturally start like pulling it closer towards me and off camera. So I only filmed a little bit of this, and then I shut the camera off and just sat and, cut out all my pieces. And this darker piece, I can see the stamp lines, no problem. You just can't really see it on camera. But same thing. I just go along and I cut right on the line. Even these little narrow lines, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just cut on the line, because the next little thing I do fixes any little imperfections, which is a black marker. Now I've got all my pieces here. I've got all the pieces I need to build their outfits that I've trimmed out. And then my black marker of choice is this Memento Tuxedo black marker. This is one of the times where I do not recommend an alcohol marker, like a Copic or Olo, whatever. I would not use an alcohol marker for this on this pattern paper, because I'm using the black marker to just go over the edge. I'm using the side of the marker. I'm going over just the side of these pieces of pattern paper that I've cut out. This is covering up that exposed white edge of the paper to make everything look more seamless. And it will make my cuts look like I am, amazing. Even though I'm not. My cuts aren't perfect. But this covers up that white edge. And then when I adhere it down, you won't be able to tell. And the reason why I do not recommend using an alcohol marker for this is an alcohol marker, the pattern paper will pull and absorb the alcohol marker, and it will cause all of the edges to be very fuzzy looking. Because unless you can move super, super quickly, and even then, I wouldn't do it. It will just look fuzzy. So this little Memento Tuxedo black marker, just any like black marker that is also, in this case, not going to smear with alcohol inks. So this is my little go-to marker. Same thing. I've been using this marker for like a decade. And I went around all those edges. Once those were done, I can then adhere these pieces down, and then it all starts coming together. And a person could stop here. You could just, cut out all your pieces, edge them with a black marker, glue them down. It looks awesome. It's fun. Like, look at all those patterns. Like, their outfits this made my day, putting all this together. And I was like, love it. Like, Ethel and Gladys, you guys look amazing. So I also, to make everything fit more seamlessly, add a bit more shading and depth with my Copic markers. This will just tie everything in together. You don't have to do it, but it is the step that just makes everything fit together more, especially since the images themselves, I added that shading, little shadows, etc. So the other thing to keep in mind is if you're going to do this is because it's pattern paper and depending on the color, etc., the color of marker you use will look different than it does on just white cardstock. So if you're not sure or whatever, take a scrap of that same pattern paper and scribble on the markers you plan to use and just see how they look. Because the biggest thing usually is you need to go darker than you would think. So I used a darker warm gray to create the shading on all of these than I did on the actual images on the white cardstock. Hopefully that makes sense. And then still following the coloring on the packaging to add the shading, because again, I would not think to add it in this way. And it's so good. It works, I look like this amazing genius coloring artist, and who knows where all the I've talked about this many times in my own videos. Shading and all of that is not my strong suit. Like, I can do it. I'd rather just color and move on. But yeah, look how it all just really starts to come together. Just adding that warm gray marker in the areas where it shows on the packaging. It ties it all together, and I just love it. Like, their little outfits and the colors, and this was so much fun. So once I was done all of my shading with this warm gray marker, this image is complete. I did have the coordinating wafer dies, so I die cut these. I would have fussy cut it. The only thing I would have left if I had fussy cut it is some of those little interior areas. I would never have bothered with that, but the die did that. But if I didn't have that, I just would have fussy cut around the perimeter of it, and it would have been fine. So I set that aside, and then I have some of Simon Says Stamp's Sage cardstock. I love this color. I need to get more of it. This panel was just slightly smaller than A2 sized. It was about 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, just slightly smaller than A2. And I die cut one of Simon's Arches wafer dies from it because I only wanted the frame. So I die cut it first because the interior portion of that cardstock, I just stick back with the rest of it. Next time I've either got an arch or I can, use it for a sentiment, whatever. The frame, I wanted to add a little bit of pattern to. So I pulled out the Swiss Dots stamp, just put it face up on my desk, inked it up with Simon's white pigment ink, pressed that frame piece of cardstock into it, and then I've got those little polka dots. And then I took another pattern paper, specifically this boba tea one. It was meant to be. Love when all this comes together. And this is going to back that frame. And then I took Simon's Ballerina Positively Saturated ink and one of my Pink Fresh blending brushes and just blended this around the perimeter of this pattern paper. It just softens it a little bit, and brings in more of that pink because, again, this color combo from the papers, I really liked that really light pink, and Simon's Ballerina ink came in clutch for that. Love it. So I just blended that around the perimeter. And then to build just a smidge of dimension, I just had scraps of heavyweight cardstock, and I'm just using them on the back of this frame. You could also just adhere it directly, or you could pop it up with foam tape, or you could back this with acetate and then pop it up with foam tape and make it into a shaker. I didn't think about that till I started editing, and I was like, oh, this would have been a really fun, easy shaker too. Don't have time. Anyway, I just used the cardstock though, just again to build just a smidge of dimension, not a whole lot. And adhere those little pieces, and this is also a good way to use up, scraps. So adhere those pieces, and then adhere this to the pattern paper, just like so. So I've got all of that. And then my card base is a top folding A2 white note card, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. I put my card base in my MISTI, and on the inside of my card, I'm going to stamp these ladies with that Ballerina Positively Saturated ink because it's light enough that I can easily write over it, but then it just, brings the design from the outside to the inside. So stamp them with that Ballerina ink, and then I took one of the sentiments from the set. Side note, that's another reason why I love Art Impressions. A lot of their sets like this with the ladies and the characters and everything else have all kinds of funny and punny sentiments. I'm here for it, always. So anyway, stamp the sentiment on the inside with the black ink. I adhered this frame and pattern paper to the card front. Then I'm going to wrap some baker's twine around this. Just, again, had some in my stash. I'm almost out of this roll. Wah. Anyway, wrap that around the card front and then reverse tweezers for the win as always. Because I start my knot, the reverse tweezers can pinch it closed for me while I fiddle and make my little bow. And then pull it tight, remove the tweezers, pull it tight again, zhuzh it a little bit more, and then trim off the tails. And then my ladies, I'm going to pop these up with some thin foam squares. And I just kind of marked with a pencil where the baker's twine is, just so I don't put foam squares there, so everything lays a little flatter. So just getting a little fiddly, So pop those on the back of this, and then pop this into place. The sentiments I did off camera. I white heat embossed the one sentiment, the let's stir things up. Love it. Again, if you didn't have the wafer dies, something like this, I would just stamp it, like die cut like an arch like this or a similar shape, and then just stamp that like along the arch, because I love me a curved sentiment. It's a little bit different, Or you stamp the ladies and then stamp that curved sentiment right above them, That would work great too. So I had white heat embossed it onto Simon's slate cardstock. I die cut it. I die cut a scrap, adhered them together, popped that onto the card. I did the same thing with the little Hey Bestie sentiment. I had stamped that with the black ink onto Simon's cotton candy cardstock, just a little scrap. Die cut a second one, adhered them together just for a little bit of dimension, and then pop that onto the card as well with a foam square. And then my final little embellishment is some clay hearts from my stash. I had some black licorice clay hearts from Trinity stamps, and then some white and pink ones from Pretty Pink Posh. These I don't even bother putting away. They sit beside me because they just work for everything. So I put a bunch of these on here because it's cute. So once I was happy with the placement, I just picked them up with my embellishment wand, adhered them to place with glue, and that finished off this card. And look at their little pattern paper clothes. Yep. It was fun. It was fun. So thank you all so very much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a ton and is always very much appreciated. I had so much fun making this. I hope you had fun watching, and I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye, everyone.
Hi there, I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.